Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrealm. Welcome back to another video, or welcome if you're new here. As you can see by the title of this video, this is my first time doing a public unhaul. So when I first moved in August of last year, I had done a couple of live shows where I was going through my book collection and packing stuff up, and some stuff I was getting rid of and some stuff I was keeping, but I've never officially done an unhaul video. In the 8 years that I've been a part of this community, I have never done this. So this is the first unhaul. We're gonna see how this is about to go. But before we get started, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, and that is a Book of the Month. So if you didn't know, Book of the Month is a super popular and fast growing online book service. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers find books that they're gonna love. So how it works is each month, the Book of the Month team spends time vetting through hundreds of books, and they come up with a specially curated selection of books for you to choose from. That way you can spend less time researching and more time reading. Book of the Month also has a great skip policy, so if there's ever a month where you don't want to choose from the selection of books that they have curated, you can skip and you will not be charged for that month. On top of this, they have the best prices for newly released hardcovers. As y'all know, at this point, with everything skyrocketing in terms of prices, from books to eggs to gas, everybody's pretty much balling on a budget, and so Book of the Month is really convenient in that you're able to get newly released hardcovers for a very low price. Today, you can get your first book with Book of the Month for $9.99 by using my code Bookishrealm. If you are interested, I'll be sure to leave that code and the link down in the description box below for you to check out. So let's go ahead and check out this month's selections. Every month, your selections will come in this blue Book of the Month box. So this month's selections for Book of the Month include 7 different titles. That includes Hang the Moon, The Only Survivors, Romantic Comedy, Camp Zero, Adelaide, Anna Maria and the Fox, and Advika and the Hollywood Wives. So for this month, I wanted to dive back into my adult reads because I spent a great majority of March reading middle grade books because it was middle grade March, and I've definitely been in the mood for romance. So the first book that I picked up for the month of April was Anna Maria and the Fox. This is a Luna Sisters novel, which for me, it's giving vibes that this is going to be a series, which I am excited about. But this focuses on a Mexican heiress that is sent to London because of the French occupation of Mexico. And while she's there, she meets a shrewd British politician, which I think is probably going to make for some amazing banter. I'm hoping that this is kind of like hate to love or enemies to lovers types of vibes, because I love either one of those tropes, because the banter between those two tropes is just... The next one that I picked out was one that just had a very interesting premise, and I feel like it's going to touch on a lot of interesting social topics, and that is Advika and the Hollywood Wives. This focuses on a main character who ends up losing her sister and decides to bartend. She's dealing with her grief, and she ends up meeting this film producer who is 40 plus years her senior, and they end up in this whirlwind of a romance and end up eloping. And one thing that she notices about their dynamic is that he is never open about his previous relationships. So when his ex-wife ends up passing away, she leaves a very interesting stipulation in her will, where I believe that it would be gifted, I think, yeah, a single film reel and $1 million will be bequeathed to Julian's latest child bride. And so she goes through and she starts to learn more about him through the lens and the perspectives of his exes. I think that this is going to be really, really interesting. I think that the 41-year age gap is going to be a great point for a lot of social commentary, and I'm very interested in this one. So like I said before, if you're interested in checking out your first Book of the Month box for $9.99, you can use the code Bookishrealm, and I'll be sure to leave all of that information in the box down below. As always, thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. All right, y'all, so let's go ahead and dive into this unhaul. I don't want this to be extremely long, and I don't really have a huge pile of books because, like I said, I kind of did a soft unhaul prior to me moving, so a great portion of my collection has already been kind of vetted through, and then every month or so I am doing a weeding process of my own collection Forgive me, it's a librarian me. I really just can't help myself. I just have to make these things happen. But here are a couple of titles that I have looked at in the past week or so and have realized that it's pretty much time for them to go because they don't belong in my collection anymore. Now, what I will do with these is that I am 9 times out of 10, well, there's a special thing that I'm doing with 3 of these titles, but the majority of them are going to be donated to my library's outreach department because they can go out into the community, whereas I'm not going to sell them. Some of them are ARCs, so I would never sell them, but you know, I will donate them and see if other people would like to read them. So the first one that I have on here is The Duke I Once Knew by Olivia Drake. I don't know. Like, I mean, if you're a historical romance girly, which I've read a few historicals, but this is one I keep looking at it, and I was sent this one a long time ago, like a long time ago. This is an arc of this one. This came out January of 2019, so I probably got this in 2018. Y'all, I'm not finna read this book. I look at this book all the time. I'm not finna read it. Like, I have no interest in it. Like, even the cover, it just is not appealing, so it's got to go. Next one, By the Book by Jasmine Guillory. This is part of the Meant to Be series. Now, granted, I read the first one in the Meant to Be series, but that was by Julie Murphy. Absolutely loved that one. And I know that I can't remember who's writing the third one, and it's a Little Mermaid retelling, and I'm getting so mad at myself for not remembering right now. But I know the third one is a Little Mermaid retelling, and I see Zarata Cordova. Oh gosh, I was never going to remember that, but I will pick up that one. Jasmine Guillory and I do not have a good relationship. Sis and I just don't see eye to eye. I read one of her books, The Wedding Date, a very long time ago, gave it 2 stars. Never really looked at her stuff the same way after that. And so I own this, and it's kind of like, thank you for sending it to me as a press kind of situation, like a press release situation, but I'm not going to pick it up. So this one is one that's literally in perfect condition, and I will see if my library actually wants to add this one to the collection. Next, I have a couple of middle grade books that it's not a thing. It's not going to happen anymore. The first one being A Win in the Door by Madeline Lingle. This is the second book, I believe, or it could be the third book. I can't remember, but this is one of the books that follows A Wrinkle in Time. If y'all can remember, I read A Wrinkle in Time for Banned Books Week in September of last year. And it wasn't the same as when I read it when I was younger. Meg was so infuriating. And granted, this one does still follow Meg. And I just don't know. She's older in this one, I believe. But y'all, honestly, I'm just not interested. And if I ever get the urge to pick up any of the books in this subsequent series, books in the series, I probably will check them out from the library and listen to them on audio. But other than that, like, I don't care enough. I've had this book for years and literally have never had the urge to pick it up. Now, I still decided to keep my copy of A Wrinkle in Time, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. Next, I have Grimworld, which is one that I read right after my daughter was born in 2019. This is a middle grade kind of spooky horror book, which is not a bad thing. I enjoyed it when I read it. I think I gave it 3.5 or 4 stars when I read it, but this is not one that I see myself reading again. I have been thinking about just my collecting habits. I have not bought books this year, to be honest with you. So with that being said, whenever I have books that I have bought or books that have been sent to me and I've already read them, I then start looking at what is the likelihood of me rereading this, and I don't plan to reread this one, so I am going to give this one away. I did have sticky notes in here, but I actually didn't physically annotate this one, so it's safe. I'll just take the sticky notes out. The next one that I have is The Book of Gods and Goddesses, a visual directory of ancient and modern deities. This is when I was going through my gods and goddesses phase. I don't know. I looked at this book once and haven't looked at it since. There have been other books that have been published since this one has been published that probably would be a better resource. Like, this was published in 2004. This is almost 20 years later. I'm sure that there are other books that detail gods and goddesses that have better research material. This is the librarian side of me coming out right now in terms of weeding. As a nonfiction book, this is past its prime. We're looking at 20 years. It's time for it to be weeded out of my collection. The next two that I have are ones that were sent to me years ago. This is Out to Get You, 13 Tales of Weirdness and Woe, and then Eleanor Alice and the Roosevelt Ghost. I don't really know anything about these. I've never shown interest in these. I've had these for about 3 or 4 years now. I've never picked them up. I've never put them on a TBR. They literally have moved from one house to another, and just there's been no interest in them. And I know that there are some kids who like spooky stuff in my community that would enjoy these better than I would, and so it's time for me to give them up. If I ever want to revisit them, I'm sure that I can find a digital or audio copy of both of them. The next one that I have is The Castle School for Troubled Girls. This is one that I went on the fence about, and this is one that I'm still on the fence about. I know that Bethany from Beautifully Bookish, Bethany, has read this one and did enjoy it, but I'm not really pressed about this one. It's a contemporary psychological thriller that takes place, I believe, in part at a boarding school. And YA mystery and thrillers are just hits and misses for me. And I've been so on the fence about this one that I looked at it and I was just like, you've been on the fence long enough. I think that it's time to just go ahead and give it up. I know that I have access to a copy of this one, so if I really want to go back and read it, I can. But in terms of the volume of materials that I now have coming in from publishers, it's time for me to kind of take out stuff that is just taking up shelf space that I need. I'm getting to the point now where I have to double stack my shelves. I don't want to really do that. I know I'm probably going to get to that point, but I'm trying to hold off having to double stack as long as possible. So we're making space for things that I'm not going to read, and, you know, shelving things that I think I'll be reading in a quicker amount of time. The next one that I have here is a Harlequin, and this is Temporary Wife Temptation by J.C. Lee. The reason why I am unhauling this one is because I've read a book by J.C. Lee before, and I am not a fan of her writing style. And I think the one book that I read by her that was traditionally published, I DNF'd. And so I also am coming to terms, as a reader, I'm coming to terms with the fact that I can continue to try an author, but typically their writing styles I may not mesh with it, and I have to kind of, you know, be okay with that. And J.C. Lee is just one of those romance authors where I think that her writing style is not one that I'm a huge fan of. So I've been holding on to this one, but I've already tried another one of her traditionally published, and I'm like, it's just, let it go. Like Elsa says, let it go. Let it go. The next one that I'm about to unhaul is actually one that I literally just read this year, but I didn't like it. So I'm not going to hold on to it. And that is Fat Angie. I ended up reading this one for a Banned Books diary, and wow, this was a way for me to highlight a book that has been challenged and banned. I was not a huge fan of Fat Angie at all. I think this was published in 2012 or 2013. Let me check the date again. 2013. And 10 years later, it doesn't hold up that well in some aspects of it. So this is one where I'm just kind of like, the writing style didn't mesh. I didn't really care for it. I don't plan on continuing the series. I do have interest in the picture books that this author is currently producing, but in terms of this particular series and this particular book, I'm no longer interested in this, so it's bye-bye. The next two are ones that I'm kind of sad to let go, but at the end of the day, I think I got them for nostalgia purposes because I haven't read them at all, and it's been years since I've gotten them. And that is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, 3 Books to Chill Your Bones, and then also Don't Turn Out the Lights, which is a tribute to Alan Schwartz, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And this had I think 35 writers on this. I've had both of these on my shelf for 3 years at this point, maybe longer. Depends on when this one came out, because it was in celebration of this one. Okay, yeah, 3 years. So I've had both of these on my shelf for 3 years now, and I have not had any interest in picking them up. I think that I was excited to receive them because of nostalgia. I grew up reading Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but this is one that I just didn't really gravitate towards. There are kids who would appreciate these in my community more than I will, and so I'm gonna make sure that they get their hands on them. As y'all can tell, I didn't include any comics, graphic novels, or manga on this list really, because that's that whole shelf behind me and I don't touch that shelf. Like, what's on that shelf is on that shelf with intention and purpose. Not that I don't like have intention and purpose in my other collection, but I'm very, very particular about that collection because a lot more of my money is in that collection, and so I'm less likely to unhaul. But there is one thing that I am unhauling, and that is Full Metal Alchemist volumes 1, 2, and 3. Now, this is not because I have no interest in reading Full Metal Alchemist, but have y'all seen the Full Metal editions, the hardcovers? Baby, they're gorgeous. And so while, you know, these bind ups are good for what they are, I really want the Full Metal like editions, the beautiful hardcover editions. And so if I plan on making an investment in those, there's no purpose in me keeping this. Like, I don't need this. Now, I may just read this to read it, but then it's gonna go because I want the nice ones on the shelf back here. This next one should be no surprise. I've held onto this book for years, but Miss Ma'am who wrote this book has pissed me off to infinity and beyond, and so she's got to go out the door. I actually think I'm gonna recycle this one because this one actually has some condition damage to it, like some stains on it that could possibly have been water damage, and so I don't want that going to anybody's household. But anyway, this is The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Souljah. Y'all know how I feel after I read Life After Death. The Coldest Winter Ever is probably one of the most prolific books in terms of street lit within the Black community. I've read The Coldest Winter Ever 2 or 3 times, and I kind of want to read it one more time to make sure I feel justified in my feelings about it. But I'm so pissed off and aggravated with Sister Souljah that I just don't even want the vibes and the energy in my house anymore, because Life After Death just pissed me off. I was so looking forward to the sequel to this one, which follows Winter Santiago, and it didn't deliver. It didn't deliver. And so now I just don't want any of the books. I actually had owned, what is the other series that she had? She had another series that followed one of the other, Midnight. It followed Midnight. And so she wrote a trilogy around Midnight, which I heard was incredibly boring. So I got rid of the books that I had in a Midnight trilogy, and now I'm getting rid of this one. But this one I'm going to recycle because this one has significant, like, it's damage on the side of it that, yeah. For some of y'all be like hauling water damage books, like, don't do that. Don't haul water damage books, y'all. If a book has water damage, like, it don't need to be on your shelf because that's mold, and then mold gets the rest of your books, and then it ruins your entire collection. Sorry, librarian in me, just gotta let you know. Now, these next 3 that I am unhauling to give to a childcare center, and I do this regularly because now I'm getting sent a lot of picture books, and some of them I do keep in my collection for future purposes for my daughter and for myself, but others I would love to just share with organizations that may not have the means to get a sufficient amount of books. And so I know that there is a specific class that could use some extra books in their collection. So I picked out 3 titles from my collection to give to them. The first one being Lola at the Library, which is a very, very popular series. Lola books are extremely popular, but I can't tell you how many times we've read Lola at the Library, how many times I've read Lola at the Library, and I don't feel the need to continue to own it. Also, Like a Dandelion. This is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful picture book, and I love that it focuses on a child's experience of moving from Cambodia to the United States. And I am a firm believer of Dr. Bishop's windows, mirrors, sliding glass doors, and so I would love for these kids to learn about a child their age that has an experience that they may not have, especially because it's a story about immigration, especially coming from Cambodia. And the last one is one that you just can't go wrong with because kids love stuff like this. And that's Car Signs and Porcupines by Ethan Long. This is a this is a fun book that has all types of random things in it, where it's full of illustrations and dialogues, and it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But like I said, I have access to all of Ethan Long's books, and I've read some of Ethan Long's books, and so I want to pass this along to a group of kids that need it more than I do. All right, y'all, so that is it. That is my unhaul. As I said before, if you're interested in trying out Book of the Month, my code Bookishrealm will be down in the description box below, as well as a link to Book of the Month's website. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. And if you're looking for ways to follow me on social media or support my channel via Patreon, all the links to that will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon.